This is Ramak Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate third part of What If Neglected Naruto Has an Unknown Tail Beast. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
As Team 12 finished 2 more C-rank missions, the following 2 months flew by. In addition, although it took some time for them to adjust to Haku joining their team, having a new team member made missions much easier. Her distinct ice style added something fresh to the team's composition. When all was said and done, their team synergy was excellent, even though it took some getting used to. Furthermore, it appeared that Haku and Yakumo were quickly becoming friends. Minato was forced to acknowledge that his son's team had adapted more effectively than he had anticipated. Additionally, he saw that Naruto had a shadow in Konohamaru, Sarutobi's grandson, who had begun to follow Naruto around and refer to him as boss of everything. This had struck Minato as a little odd and a little funny. Nevertheless, Naruto appeared to like him and even showed him some low-level academy jutsu that would be useful to him. Naruto had even begun to assist him in controlling his chakras. Additionally, Minato learned that Naruto and Shikamaru had begun playing shogi on a regular basis. Although it was encouraging to watch Naruto build relationships and integrate more into the village, Minato had to acknowledge that it wasn't his primary concern. The encounter he had with Naruto had been on his mind a lot lately. Even though it didn't reveal as much as Minato had hoped, everything had gone smoothly given that Jiraiya and Kushina had both been there. He had questioned Naruto about the mission, focusing on the method he had employed and the topics he had discussed with his team. Naruto informed them of what had transpired and the information he had disclosed. Naruto had only told his team about it. This demonstrated Naruto's level of trust in them. Ironically, Yakumo was the only actual member of his team who was unaware at the time. Koga would have known because Minato and Kushina had told the children about Naruto's possession of some of the fox's chakra, and Yugo, his sensei and older sister figure, had already learned about it from reading his file. However, since they were 9 years old at the time, Naruto must have discovered it while in the Forest of Death, but how? Had he spoken to the creature that had emerged from the sealing procedure? Who had taught him how to use its chakra? This raised yet another question that had to be answered. He had asked Naruto to show the technique during the meeting so Kushina could confirm its veracity, and she had done so. What to do next was the question. If Minato did nothing, Naruto would be exposed to those who would be pursuing him if they ever learned, but if he placed an Enbu detail on him, it would be interpreted as a sign that they did not trust him. Minato's adversaries from the previous Great Ninja War would do anything to gain access to him via his son. He asked Yugo to closely monitor the situation and let him know if anything changed, but in the end he chose not to. The Chunin exams, which would be held in the Leaf Village this time, were just around the corner, adding to the chaos. Minato was aware that it would be a busy morning with a ton of paperwork to complete before and after the event. Minato also wanted to know who would nominate members of their team to take the test. Since the exam was scheduled to begin the following week, applications had to be submitted by the end of the week. Minato had summoned all of his Jonin sensei to report on the situation for the same reason. The meeting finally started after everyone had shown up and Kakashi had arrived late. Not masking his excitement at who would enter, Minato said, "Now that everyone's here, let's begin, shall we?" He nodded in agreement that they had complied with the requirements after a few of the individuals he had anticipated entering did. Some Jonin chose not to participate because they believed their teams did not meet the exam's requirements. Guy came forward and let out a loud yosh. Minato laughed wryly as he announced his nomination. Hokage Sama, my youthful genin are more than ready to let their youth shine this year in the exam. Guy almost yelled. He consented after becoming somewhat accustomed to the guy's demeanor. Guy responded with a nice guy pose when Minato said, "Yes, your genin have been together for about a year and a half, so they do meet the requirements, Guy. They're free to enter." Kakashi said casually, "Minato Sensei, I want to enter Team 7 into this year's exams." Minato sighed because he knew this would happen. After all, Kakashi wanted them to succeed and was, in many ways, their older brother figure. But he thought this was a bit much. Assuming that Kakashi's children had been nagging him to enter them non-stop, Minato said, "I understand, Kakashi, but could you give me a reasoning as to why I should enter them? Just because they're my children doesn't mean that they're ready, you know." "I understand, Minato Sensei, but I honestly do believe that they are ready. All of them have Jonin level chakra reserves and are already proficient in both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Also, they have completed 31 D-rank missions and 3 C-rank missions. Their teamwork might not be the best of the best, but they have improved greatly. Not to mention that they're strong individually as well. Because of that they show the potential to become Chunin and pass the exam. Kakashi reported, a slightly condescending tone seeping into his voice as he eyed the other Jonin. At that question, Kakashi gave a nervous smile and scratched the back of his head, which caused Minato to sigh. While I still think it is a bit too early for this, I'll trust your judgment on this as their sensei Kakashi. I will allow them to enter the exams, but I wonder, have you told them of the dangers of taking the exam yet? The copy ninja excelled at many things but was a complete failure at others. At her succinct report, Minato grinned and nodded, causing Kurenai to give Kakashi a smug smile that made the latter's eye twitch. Hokage Sama, Team 8 is ready to enter. They specialize in hunting and tracking, but even beyond that they show promise and potential to pass the exams. They have their problems like any team, but when pushed, they are an efficient team and have shown that to me. They've completed 33 D rank missions and 2 C rank. While they lack experience they make up for it in determination and ingenuity. Alright, if you believe that they can come together then I'll allow it, but do tell them about the dangers, alright? She replied with a nod. Hokage Sama, Team 10 is ready. Though they are slackers at times, they do have the potential as the next Ino. Shika Sho, and I've seen it on more than a few occasions. They've still got a long way to go. Shikamaru and Choji share a close bond, though Ino doesn't always like working with them. But underneath all of that, they're more than capable of passing. They've finished 35 D rank missions and 2 C rank, so they've got some experience handling the harder stuff. Asuma stated, taking a moment to breathe. With a sigh, Minato nodded. He was aware that they would encounter some difficulties, but based on Asuma's reports, he believed Shikamaru's intelligence would enable him to rescue them from the majority of predicaments. Asuma smiled back at Minato, who said, okay Asuma, I'll let them in. Shikamaru-kun should be able to keep them safe given his intelligence, and with the three of them working together they should be safe. This is why Minato blinked. Richi wanted to join a team that wasn't prepared. Alright Hokage Sama, I'm not going to lie here, but I really don't think that Team 11 is ready for the exams, but I want them to enter to see how far behind they really are. They're the most unbalanced team that I've seen, it's almost unthinkable. Sasuke has put forth next no effort when it comes to interacting with his teammates. After learning his sister Setsuna unlocked her Sharingan, he's been doing everything to try and force his awaken. Sakura hasn't lost her fangirl attitude towards Sasuke, and because of that she hasn't really become any stronger as she is too focused on her obsession with him. If anything she's become a little weaker I think, as she is letting this impact how hard she trains. Sai on the other hand still gives off a strange vibe. I don't know what's going on in his head and it's making me an Orochimaru. Sama cautious. They've done 30 D rank missions and 1 C rank, but even after all of that, they've still not improved their teamwork enough. Richi reported, sighing heavily as some of the other Jonin gave him pitying looks. I understand Richi, while I would normally not allow them to enter they do need to realize just how far behind they are and that personal skill alone doesn't make you a powerful ninja. I'll allow them to enter on the condition that you tell them about the dangers about what could happen to them. If even one of them backs out then they all aren't going to be able to enter. Minato replied with a nod. Next to speak was Genma, who said, Hokage-sama, I am more than confident that my team is ready to take the exam because they have been together for a year and have made great progress both individually and as a team. Their teamwork speaks for itself, as well as their individual skills. When Genma nodded, Minato said, they do meet the requirements Genma, they're free to enter the exam. At last, all eyes were on Yugo, who had the option of submitting her team for the exam or refusing to let them take it. Yugo said that her team was prepared to take the exam, and when Minato inquired, she shocked him by claiming that she had already warned her team about the exam's risks. Yugo said that she had warned them, and even knowing the risks, they consented to enter if permitted. They have finished 35 D rank missions and 3 C rank missions, so I think they are prepared. Only Minato, Yugo, and authorized personnel were aware that the first of those 3 C rank missions had changed to an A rank because it was marked as a classified C rank mission in the team's files. They have made significant progress and demonstrated that they can function as a team, even with the addition of Haku. They have exceeded expectations beyond recognition. Before inquiring as to whether there were any other nominations, Minato stated, okay, Yugo, I'll let them in. If what you said is true, then I have no doubts that they will go far in this year's exam. Minato instructed them to submit their applications by the end of the week, after which they were dismissed because no one else had nominated their team for the test. When he got home that evening, Kushina inquired about his day. He informed her about the impending tests and the fact that their children would be taking them. This made Kushina pause and turn to Minato. Her expression told him that he had better be careful what he said next, or else he would end up in the doghouse as a chew toy for the dogs of the Inazaka clan. With her famous catchphrase, Minato stated, "Kushina, we can't keep them from taking this exam forever, you know." With a sigh, she and Minato took a seat at the table. With a tone of maternal concern in her voice, Kushina remarked, "I know, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still my babies." Minato took his wife's hand in his and squeezed it reassuringly, saying, "I know, Kushina, they're my kids too, but we have to let them stand on their own eventually. That doesn't mean though that we can't show them that we are there for them if and when they need us." She took Minato's other hand and smiled before leaning in to give him a kiss. "You know just what to say, you know." Minato stood up and said, "I know. Say let's get the kids and go get something to eat." After that, they got their children together and headed out to supper. The following day, Naruto was walking around the town when he heard a fight going on and hurried to find out what was going on. When he got there, he noticed a boy his age getting dressed in a black bodysuit with a Suna headband fastened to a black hood with pointed, cat-ear-like appendages. He had purple paint on his face and a strange, bandaged object strapped to his back. Two other children looked on in horror and fear as he held a small boy, who just so happened to be Konohamaru, by the scarf around his neck. A blonde girl was standing close to him, looking. The teenager called out to Konohamaru, who began to tremble, "Watch where you're going, you little brat." "Kankuro, put him down. We don't want to cause a scene," said a second young woman, a girl dressed in purple, with fish netting on her arms and legs and a huge fan on her back. As Konohamaru's eyes widened slightly in fear, Kankuro simply shrugged and said, "It's fine sis, I'm just gonna first teach him a bit about respecting his elders. They won't whine too much." The teen cocked his fist back as the younger boy closed his eyes, bracing for the blow. "Oh, you gonna cry now? Tisk, who knew that there were such brats in this village? I'll really make you cry," he said. Before he could take action, however, Naruto had materialized beside him and had taken hold of his free wrist in a vice grip, causing him to wince as he applied pressure by twisting the wrist slightly. The teenager turned to face the blonde and exclaimed, "Goo! WH! What the hell?" Before anyone could speak, Konohamaru and the other two children instantly became happier. They yelled, "Naruto ni-chan," as the blonde inquired about Konohamaru's well-being before returning his entire attention to the Suna.nin. Turning his head to glare at the older boy, Naruto said in a deadly serious tone, "I am only going to say this once. Put Konohamaru down." The Suna.nin glared back at Naruto before he released the young boy. The tense atmosphere that had been created was broken by the sound of running footsteps just as things were about to heat up. A frowning Sasuke was standing next to Menma, Kiba, and a few other people as they ran towards the scene. They hurried to the source as soon as they heard Konohamaru scream, and Sasuke even followed, curious to see what was going on. However, when their eyes met Naruto's blank navy ones, they all froze. Naruto turned to face the Suna.nin again, but decided that doing anything more would only lead to trouble, so he let go of his hand. The blonde's speed astounded both Tamari. And the fact that he essentially prevented an international incident by saving their ass. That would have presented an issue. I would think a shinobi who is a guest in another shinobi village would know better than to start causing trouble. Now get lost, and if I find you friending a little kid in this village again, you might just lose that hand," he said with the same icy voice. The blonde interrupted the teenager before he could respond. The teen froze, his eyes widening as a teenage boy with red hair and a gourd appeared in a swirl of sand. "And you, in the tree, I'm guessing that you're his teammate. You better beat it as well." When the teen stammered, Gara, everyone's eyes were drawn to the redhead, which appeared to be the source of the teen's anxiety. The redhead's flat voice made everyone, except Naruto, cringe. "Kankuro, you're a disgrace to our village. You let yourself be carried away just from a bit of dirt on your clothes. If you do that again, you won't have to worry about losing that hand. I'll kill you myself." He turned to Naruto and spoke to him. "I am Gara of the Sand. What is your name?" he inquired. He received the response, "Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze." This caused the redhead to smile a little maniacally. Before he and the other two began to leave, he said in a crazy voice, "Naruto. Mother will enjoy it when I spill your blood. You will help to acknowledge my existence." But when Sasuke called out to him, he stopped. "Hey," he exclaimed, "I will beat you, not him. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, remember it when you lose to me." With rage leaking into the other boys' faces, Gara pointed to Naruto and declared, "I have no interest in any of you other than him." The Konoha ninja were left alone when the three sand shinobi vanished from view. Before anyone could speak, Konohamaru and his two friends, Udon and Moegi, ran up to Naruto and thanked him for saving Konohamaru. They then began to talk about how awesome he was. A small smile appeared on his face as he nodded to them, warned them to exercise greater caution, and turned to leave. Menma glared at his older brother and growled, "Don't think that you're some kind of hero just because you did something like that." Kiba yelled, glaring at the blonde, "Yeah, you're lucky that we got here or else you would have been put into the ground." In response to these comments, Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi turned against the older boys and ordered them to retract their statements. Before he spoke, Naruto turned and looked down at his brother. "I've had just about enough of your attitude, Menma. How long are you planning to keep this up? Until you're a Chunin? Jonin? Anbu? Because if you keep acting like you're superior to everyone else, you're going to end up getting yourself killed along with your squad." At this point, Menma blinked. As he walked forward until he was facing his brother, Naruto said, "I know you dislike me. You think that I'm weak, that I'm not worth the time of day. But let me let you in on a little secret, Menma," Naruto said, leaning in so that only Menma could hear. "What you think is true and what is true are two different things." Menma was stunned by those words, and before he could gather himself, Naruto continued. Naruto said, "Let me tell you all a little something, especially you two," referring specifically to Menma and Kiba. "Your current attitudes will get you or someone you know killed. No matter how strong, intelligent, or courageous you believe yourself to be, if you continue to act as though you are unbeatable, someone will perish. Before it kills you or someone else, you must change that mindset." The three young children ran to catch up with Naruto as he turned and left the group after lecturing his brother and his friends. The following day, Kakashi gave Naruto his customary, "Yo" greeting while he was out and about. As he passed by, Naruto greeted him, but the copy ninja fell into step next to him. "I hear your team is going to enter the Chunin exam. What about it?" asked Naruto. Then Kakashi disappeared and reappeared behind Naruto. "Oh, I just thought I would give you a little advice. Never let your guard down," he said. Leaf Village Secret Finger Jutsu. Naruto moved so quickly before Kakashi could complete his surprise attack that you would have assumed he had simply used Flying Raijin. "Oh heck no, no one is probing my ass," he roared, turning to face Kakashi across the street. He smirked beneath his mask, letting his laughter filter into his voice as he grinned at the young blonde. "So you are familiar with 1,000 Years of Death?" He was surprised by how quickly his sensei's son could move. This caused a flashback to a picture of Naruto at the age of 7. A younger Anko was laughing hysterically at Naruto as he pulled himself out of the river, soaking wet, and rubbed his sore rear end. Before responding, Naruto shuddered at the recollection. Naruto said, "Without going into further detail, you could say that." Kakashi said nonchalantly, as if he hadn't just attempted to anal probe Naruto. "Well, then best of luck in the exam." "Oh, and that was payback for threatening my book collection." Kakashi then disappeared in a cloud of smoke. The following days passed until the exam day finally arrived, at which point all of the Genin teams that had submitted applications made their way to the exam building. When the foursome from Team 12 reached the second floor, they discovered a group of Genin frantically trying to enter the exam room, only to be told to leave by two Chunin that this was not a test for the week. "Isn't the exam in room 301? Yakumo asked, stopping the other members of the team. "Yeah," Koga answered, maintaining the same low volume as she had. "It is. What about it?" "So, why are those guys trying to get into a room on the second floor? The room numbers go by floor, right?" she asked. Naruto uttered the barely audible question, "Genjutsu?" Yakumo indicated the stairwell leading to the next floor with a nod. The group nodded and proceeded to the next floor, following her example. Yugo was waiting for them outside the exam room when they got there. As she watched them enter the room, she smiled and said, "Good to see you all showed up. You may now enter the exams. Best of luck in there." Shikamaru felt uneasy. He found himself in a room full of people who would kill him in order to advance in their careers. What brought him here? Because if he didn't come, Ino would ruin what was left of his eardrums. Does she truly believe that if she makes Chunin, Sasuke will notice her? Shoji was concerned. He questioned whether they were prepared for this. Naturally, Asuma stated that he trusted them, but some of the other ninja present had far more experience than they did. "All I can hope is that we survive this." Ino was on her feet, pacing in front of her teammates. Impressing Sasuke was ideal during the Chunin exams. Would it be sufficient that Haku had assisted her in creating a training schedule that worked with her hectic schedule? "I have made an effort to improve as a ninja," Sasuke.kun. Heck, Naruto had even assisted her in training. "I just want you to notice me." As she considered Naruto and what he might think, Her heart began to beat a little bit more quickly. What am I thinking? Is it possible that I could like Naruto? That idea caused her to pace more frantically. Naruto and his group moved to the wall close to them as soon as they entered the room. Along with Yakumo and Naruto, who were all dressed in their standard ninja attire, Koga was dressed in a gray short-sleeved shirt and a faded blue vest with white-grayish fur around the shoulders and the Uzumaki spiral on the back. Shinobi shoes and a pair of black shinobi pants. When Haku went shopping with Ino and the girls, she was wearing the new shoulder-less battle kimono she had received. It was deep purple, had black trim, and had a white snowflake on the back. Naruto led his team over to Shikamaru and his group when he spied them in a corner. He smiled at Team 10 and took a seat on the wall. Haku had trailed him to Ino's side. "Hey Ino, glad you guys could make it." Ino smiled. "Haku, glad to see you in your new kimono, it looks fabulous on you just like I said it would." "Naruto, Koga, Yakumo, glad to see you three as well," Ino said to them all. In the past, she would have considered Naruto odd. However, she quickly became friends with the real Naruto after meeting him. She discovered a clever, gregarious, and devoted friend without the emotionless mask he wore, and perhaps more than that, she blushed a little at this. Naruto got a response from Shikamaru. As Choji simply nibbled on his bag of chips, the Nara leaned back against the wall and remarked, "These exams are too troublesome." The remark from his friends made Naruto laugh. Naruto, who had previously met Shikamaru's parents because his mom and Shikamaru's mom were close friends, stated, "You know Ino will beat you to a pulp if you don't give this your all, and then your mom will kill you when Ino's done." He was aware that Yoshino Nara did not put up with indolence. Shikamaru shuddered at the idea of his mother stalking him around the village and screaming that she would kill him for giving up on the test. He was startled out of his reverie before he could continue when the room's door was kicked in. In terms of height and style, the person standing in the doorway was identical to Naruto. He sneered at the general gathering of fellow genin while standing with his arms crossed in defiance. As they entered, both of his sisters merely sighed and shook their heads, but several genin glared at Menma. Narumi was about to scold her brother for being a fool when she said, deadpan, "The door wasn't locked, Menma." She wished she could vanish. Ignoring the antics of her brothers, Mito entered behind her. She mentally sighed, so much for not drawing attention to ourselves, as she noticed that all of the eyes in the room were now on them. She then turned to face the other genin from their class. She nodded to him and smiled when she saw Naruto and his team. Naruto nodded back, but the smile was a different matter. Menma approached Kiba, who had been with his team, and struck up a conversation about how much fun this was going to be. Narumi moved to Mito's side. As this was going on, Shino approached Naruto and wished him luck on the test. Naruto reciprocated by shaking hands with him, and Hinata stood beside Shino, unsure of how to respond. Naruto wished her luck before she could take any action, and she was able to shake his hand without passing out. Sakura, Sasuke, and Sai arrived last. Following all of this, a leaf shinobi came up to the group. "Hey, you guys, you might want to try keeping it down a little. I mean, no offense, but you're all rookies, right? Fresh from the academy. I wouldn't go making a spectacle of yourselves, just cool it. This isn't a class field trip." The genin replied as he raised his glasses. The majority of the group and everyone in the room with sensitive ears winced when Sakura asked, "Well, who asked you? Who are you anyway?" The majority of people in the room were staring at them when the group said, "I'm Kabuto Yakushi, but really look around you, you've made quite an impression. You can't help it. I mean, how could you know how things work, you're just rookies." Haku raised his voice. "Kabuto-san, how many times have you taken this exam?" Kabuto grinned. "This will be my 7th time. Since they are held twice a year, this will be my 4th year. So, I guess all those rumors about the exam being tough are true. Oh man, I knew this was going to be a drag," Shikamaru said. "Hang on, don't give up just yet. Perhaps I can help you kids out a little." Kabuto pulled a deck of cards out of his pocket in response. "With my ninja info cards." Sakura was the first in the group to ask, "What the heck are those?" Kneeling on the floor, he put the card deck down and said, "It's difficult to explain, but these cards have been chakra encoded with everything I have learned over the past 4 years." He flipped a card to demonstrate his point, saying, "So, you see, I haven't been completely wasting my time. They may not look like much to the naked eye, in fact they appear blank. Don't want just anyone seeing this stuff." "Do those cards of yours have info on the other candidates individually?" asked Sasuke. Kabuto answered, "They might. You have someone special in mind?" He replied in his typical irritated tone, "I might." With a hint of smugness in his voice, he stated, Well, my info may not be complete, but I have at least something on just about everyone. Including you guys, of course. So, which one is it? Give me anything you know about them, anything at all. Sasuke's eyes briefly paused before adding, and Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze while you're at it. The final addition to his list of names caught most of them off guard. He's Gaara of the Sand, then there's Rock Lee of the Leaf, for a brief moment. With a disappointed tone, Kabuto grabbed the 3 cards from the deck and held them up, saying, "Here they are." "That's no fun, you even know their names, that makes it easy." As if they were the secret to his success, Sasuke said, "Show them to me." "All right, Rock Lee is up first." Kabuto put the card on the ground and used his index finger to spin it. Ino questioned, perplexed by the elder Genin's behavior, "What are you doing?" There was a poof as the card's information appeared after he said, "I'm infusing my chakra into the card like this." Rock Lee, mission experience 20 D ranks and 11 C ranks. His squad leader is Guy. In the last 12 months his taijutsu has radically improved, but his other skills are shaky. Last year he got a lot of attention as a genin. However, he chose to forego the exam, so this is his first time entering. His teammate are Tenten and Neji Hyuga. Hinata's eyes changed so slightly at this point that hardly anyone noticed, but Naruto saw that he was aware of the Hyuga's entire situation, including their main family and branch family, which were essentially the main family's slaves in a sense. Next up is Gaara of the Sand. Mission experience 8 C ranks and get this 1 B rank as a genin. Not much else, to be honest, he's a rookie from the sand, but there is this: he has finished every mission without a scratch. With everyone's opinions expressed, Shikamaru asked out loud, "The dude's done a B rank as a genin and has never been injured." Lastly, Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze, mission experience 35 D ranks, 3 C ranks, and 1 B rank. Very impressive, I must say. At this point, the majority of the group stared at Naruto in shock, and Menma scowled at him. Only those in attendance were aware that the B rank mission was when he and Koga severely beat Mizuki after he persuaded Narumi to steal the secret sealing scroll. Sensei as Yugo and his teammates are Koga Uzumaki, Namikaze, Yakumo Kurama, and Hikuma Mochi. He ran away into the Forest of Death at age 8 and stayed in there 4 years before coming back. Lastly, he is one of the 4 out of 5 children of the Hokage to have a part of the 9-tailed fox's chakra sealed inside him. Kabuto concluded. The information caused most of the other rookies to blink in surprise. Naruto made a mental note to inform his father that a genin had somehow obtained access to classified material that he shouldn't have had. Kiba gave a snort. "I just want to know how many people I get to beat the tar out of." Kabuto grinned. He pulled out another card and used chakra to return to lecture mode. "Well, Inuzuka-san, you're in luck. I have the info right here. This exam has teams participating from the Leaf, Sand, Rain, Grass Waterfall and Sound villages. Out of all the countries represented, the Leaf has the most, seeing as it's being held here. It seems that this year each village has sent their top genin to the exam. However, the hidden Sound village is small, it's still new, those guys are a mystery." Kabuto pulled his sleeve back as he struck, and one of the genin from the Sound rushed at him. Although Kabuto was able to avoid the attack, his glasses broke. Many, including Sasuke, began to wonder how he was struck, and Kabuto ended up throwing up as a result. The one with the bandages covering the majority of his face spoke up as the 3 Sound shinobi stood in front of the genin, who was now without spectacles. "The shinobi from the Sound village will be Chunin when this exam is over, so write this down on one of your cards." A group of shinobi then emerged from the smoke cloud in front of the room. "All right, you baby-faced degenerates, pipe down and listen up. It's time to begin. My name is Ibiki Morino, your proctor, and from this moment on your worst enemy. First, you genin from the village hidden in the Sound, do you want to be failed before we've even stated?" One of the Sound ninja responded to this statement by saying, "Sorry, I guess we were just a bit jumpy, sir. I am only going to say this once, so listen up. There will be no fighting unless an exam proctor tells you to. Even then, the use of lethal force is expressly prohibited. Is that understood? Anyone who even thinks of testing me on this will be failed immediately." Ibiki spoke with complete confidence. Another Sound ninja said, "No lethal force, that's no fun." This made some of the people with Ibiki start laughing. Everyone was given a paper and number in exchange for their entrance applications at this point. Now that we have gotten that out of the way, all of you will submit your paperwork, and in exchange you will be given a number. This number will determine where you sit during the test. After that, everyone was seated by number. Ibiki drew everyone's attention by tapping the chalkboard. "Alright, eyes front. There are a few rules you need to be aware of, and I won't answer any questions, so you better pay attention the first time." Ibiki then began to write on the board. There are 10 questions to this part of the exam. You start with a perfect score of 10 points. For each question not answered or answered incorrectly, you will lose a point. So, if you get 3 questions wrong, your score will be 7. The 10th question will be given 15 minutes before the end of the exam. When the exam is over, you will pass or fail based on the combined scores of all team members. Wait, you mean you'll be scoring us as a team? Sakura's face shot up the desk, her voice filled with indignation as she raised her head. Pipe down, I have my reasons for doing so, Ibiki responded before going on. Third, the sentinels around the room are there to catch anyone who is trying to cheat, and if you are caught cheating, you will immediately lose 2 points. If you are caught 5 times, you will be immediately dismissed along with your team. Anyone fool enough to get caught cheating by the sentinels doesn't deserve to be here. Lastly, if anyone scores no points, they and their team will be failed. You have 1 hour starting now. After flipping their papers, everyone got started. As soon as Naruto began studying the test, he realized that these questions were far beyond any genin's capabilities. After reviewing Ibiki's speech, he came to a realization. If we were caught cheating in the academy, we were immediately dismissed. Therefore, the test is not about knowing the material if that is the case. Information gathering is the main focus of the test. Actually, I believe that Haku's Senbon training may have given her some knowledge of this trajectory stuff. Someone in his row was already writing, so he looked around and thought, there must be a plant somewhere in the room. I think I found one, but how can I obtain the details? Ko added that since he knew everything there was to know about this case, he couldn't be of any assistance. Additionally, the test wasn't really for him, which caused Naruto to palm his face in his mind. I already knew that one. You didn't need to tell me. Some of them had already figured out the test's true meaning and were cheating, as Ibiki happened to notice. The girl with the bun hair had somehow connected a set of mirrors to one of the overhead lights using wires that were connected to her pencil. He saw an Aburame using his insects to gather information. During this time, the Inazaka child used his dog to obtain the answers. The Byakugan was being used by the Hyuga. The girl with the pink hair appeared to be one of the few who was passing the test by applying her knowledge and not cheating. A mouse that appeared to be made of ink was also seen by him scuttling over to a pale boy and providing him with the answers. Uchiha, on the other hand, used her Shengen to ask the person in front of her questions. He also notices an ice mirror above one of the girls. When Naruto looked around, he saw Haku's mirror, but he couldn't get a clear view of it, and he knew he had no reliable way to get the information from the plant he saw. A kunai sailed straight past his head, missing by just an inch, striking the test of the person to his right behind him while he was preoccupied with what to do. The test taker was shaken when a sentinel informed him that he and his teammates were to leave as their numbers were called out because they had been caught cheating 5 times. Naruto only realized that the man behind him had been let down, missing the majority of it. It was intriguing to Ibiki. The child didn't even bat an eye. Is he truly that composed, or is he simply that unaware? He thought to himself. The sentinel who caught him slammed him into a wall and held him there while telling him that they didn't make mistakes, which is why they were handpicked for this task, and that he and his teammates were to leave. This came after a few more teams were ejected after being caught cheating and eliminated. One participant in particular was vocal about their elimination, asking how they could possibly watch all of the participants. Naruto decided to play a foul and try things out for a while after having an epiphany. He was seated next to Sasuke, and Naruto had observed that he had already completed the questions. In order to carry out his plan, Naruto rolled a smoke bomb down several chairs with his foot. The entire row was covered in smoke when it went off. Whose it was, the sentinels did not know. Now, using the smoke as a cover, Naruto replaced Sasuke's test with his own, erasing his name and replacing it with his. At this point, Sasuke's test was blank. Ibiki was nearly incensed that someone would attempt such a stunt, but he had to give credit to the person who did it because it didn't violate the rules he had established, so he would overlook it once. The majority of the row flinched when he said, "All right. Who is the smart ass who thinks this is a game?" He paused, not really expecting a response, and continued, "Fine, since I don't expect anyone to take the blame for it, then how about I just subtract 5 points from the whole row for good measure? I will forgive this one offense. If it happens again, I will dismiss the entire row and their teams from this exam. Do I make myself clear?" Sasuke would have accused one of the other participants of cheating after Ibiki finished his statement, but that would have likely resulted in him being marked for cheating and possibly dismissed because it would have drawn too much attention. Instead, he looked down to see his test was blank. However, he would only need to quickly rewrite his responses because he remembered what he had written. The 51 teams that arrived were whittled down to 39 after 30 minutes. After 15 more minutes had gone by, Ibiki finally spoke. These rules are unique to question 10, so listen carefully and try not to let them frighten you. He stopped before continuing. Rule 1: each of you is free to choose not to take the final question, it's your decision. Whoa, so what's the catch? Let's say we decide we don't want to do it, what happens then? Tamari said at this point. There were whispers in the room that there was no choice but to take the final question. Ibiki said, if you chose not to take the last question regardless of your answers to the other 9 questions, you will get a 0, in other words you fail. And that means by default your team fails. However, Ibiki interrupted, saying, not so fast, you never let me finish. The room fell silent. If you do choose to take the question but get it wrong, you will not only fail but you will be forbidden from taking the Chunin exam ever again. Hiba Inazaka erupted at this point and yelled, that's bull, man. This is ridiculous. What kind of asinine rule is that? There are plenty of people here who have taken the exam multiple times. I guess you're just unlucky. I wasn't making the rules before, but I am now. But if you don't want to take it, you don't have to, Ibiki said, laughing at this statement. Hiba stumbled a little at this point, saying, if you're not feeling confident, then by all means skip it. You can come back and try again next year. Now then, if you're ready. The 10th and final question: those who don't want to take it, raise your hand. Your number will be recorded and then you free to go. At this point, his number and his teammates' numbers were called out as failing, and they departed. One person stood up and raised his hand, saying, I'm out, that's it, I'm out, I just can't do it. One by one, people raised their hands and departed the room as though a dam had exploded. Remember, this decision is one that could change your life. If for any reason you would rather not chance it, there's the door. This is your last chance, Ibiki said as the flow slowed to a halt. Narumi was undecided about answering the question, so she was tempted to raise her hand. She would be okay if she answered the question correctly, but if she answered incorrectly, she would be stuck as a genin for the rest of her life and would never be able to take the test again. A voice spoke before her determination wavered. Naruto, irritated that Ibiki was taking pleasure in the situation, remarked, just get on with it already. At this point, Narumi's determination solidified the consequences. She was determined to reach Chunin no matter what. Ibiki grinned as he looked around and saw that nobody else was faltering. Well then, I guess there's just one thing left to say. You all pass. Ibiki said. I hereby declare this part of the Chunin exam over, you all pass. Sakura yelled, wait, what about the rest of the test? At this point, when Ibiki removed his bandana, the majority of the room recoiled at the sight of the numerous scars scattered across his head. The test was never about the paper test, but it was about your ability to gather information without being detected. Though to the one who used the smoke bomb, I do give you credit. You made a judgment call that your stealth skills were not your best option, and so you opted for distraction instead of discretion. Bold choice, but nevertheless effective. Just don't think it will work every time. A Chunin is a leader and as such must make difficult decisions every time they go into a mission. You demonstrated that when you chose to stay. As to the last bid, to stay or not, was the 10th question. Returning his headband prior to speaking once more, as I said. A huge black mass smashed through the window before he could finish, and then a number of kunai exploded out to embed in the ceiling and floor, revealing a huge banner. Jumped the gun as usual, Ibiki sighed inwardly at this point. In front of that banner now stood a woman in her 20s with purple hair. She pumped her fist in the air and exclaimed, I'm Mitarashi Anko. I'll be your next proctor. You ready for the second test? Good, now follow me. In his mind, Naruto wrote, that was actually kind of cool. Though it was ill-timed, I should ask Anko how to do that later because I can come up with a few practical jokes. As he looked around the banner, Ibiki said flatly, you're early, again. His comment caused Anko to grimace before she realized how many people were still there. Ibiki, you're losing your touch. There are still over 20 teams left. Your test must have been too easy. You must be getting soft. Or maybe we have a better group of prospects this year, he responded. Anko surveyed the room before responding, that's so? Well, trust me, when I am done more than half will be eliminated. Many of them were wondering what this crazy woman had planned, and there was a murmur throughout the room. This is going to be fun. Alright, you maggots have had it easy so far, but things are going to be different come first thing in the morning. I will let your squad leaders know where to have you meet me. Dismissed. Ibiki collected the exam papers after the room had been cleared out, but he stopped when he reached Naruto's test because it had a note instructing him to read the back. When the test was turned over, a brief note was included to let the Hokage know that a genin named Kabuto had somehow obtained information about the fox being sealed inside him and his siblings, as well as the fact that he and Koga had received a B rank for their interactions with Mizuki. Before his body flickered out of the room, Ibiki blinked at this. He had to bring this new development directly to the attention of the Hokage. Being the head of the Anbu T&I department, Ibiki had received a briefing on the situation of the Hokage's children, which raised some questions because he was aware that the information was classified. How could a genin have obtained it? Since the majority of genin who had completed the first section of the exam were simply relieved to be done, the remainder of the day went by quickly. Since the next section of the test was scheduled to begin at 8 a.m., they all submitted their work ahead of schedule. Anko and a few other shinobi were waiting for the remaining exam takers outside Training Ground 44 the following morning. They were seated at a desk that had been erected outside the fenced-in training area. Now, welcome to Training Ground 44, better known as the Forest of Death. This is where the second part of the Chunin exams will take place. Now before I go any further, I have something to give each of you. She said, holding up a stack of papers. It's your standard everyday consent form since you will be in real danger of dying in this part of the test, so if you plan to continue from here out you will have to read over, sign, and turn in this form. This test will consist of a no-holds-barred battle. Each team will need to find and secure a pair of these scrolls and make your way to the tower at the center of the training ground. Anko said, holding out a set of scrolls that had kanji for earth and heaven on them. Half of the teams taking part will be given a heaven scroll while the other half will be given an earth scroll. Sakura then said, so that means that when this part of the test is over at least half if not more than half will be eliminated. No one said it would be easy, it is a survival test after all. Oh, and this test has a time limit, you will have to fight and survive for 5 days. 5 days out there? Yelled Ino, astonished. With a dejected expression on his face at the prospect of starvation, Shoji asked, what are we supposed to do for food? Just look around, the forest has plenty to offer you in the way of food. There's plenty of wild game and edible plants that you can eat, replied Anko. Kabuto raised his voice in response. Yeah, but that's not all though, this forest also has wild beasts and predators along with poisonous plants. This test is not only meant to test your survival skills but also test your endurance behind enemy lines. It's designed to be a grueling test, and some of you will not make it back from this test. So let's say mid-exam can we quit? Shikamaru asked, raising his hand at this point. This Shikamaru mutter is a drag. Of course, not, you can't just say in the middle of a battle, sorry I quit. Well, I guess you could, but it'll probably get you killed. Anyway, there are a few ways to fail this test. First is if a team fails to make it to the tower with both scrolls in the time limit. Second, if one of the team members dies or becomes incapacitated and can't go on. Lastly, you are not to open the scrolls until you reach the tower. The scroll rule is to test your integrity. At times shinobi will be asked to carry secret documents that are classified. This rule simulates that. Now if there are no more questions, we're done here. Each team take your consent forms and exchange them at the booth for your scrolls, then pick a gate. She paused to take a breath. Oh, I almost forgot, one of the teams participating this year has 4 members on it, so they will be given a special scroll called the Man Scroll. This scroll is going to be the scroll they start with. This scroll can be used by any other team as a substitute for either of the other scrolls needed in order to pass. However, the team with 4 members must have all 3 scrolls to pass. This means that they will not only need to get both the Heaven and Earth scrolls, but they will also have to hold onto the Man Scroll as well. This made Koga smirk a bit at the idea of a challenge. Haku shrugged, since it was expected that the proctor would make the test harder for the team with a number advantage. Now that they had a huge target on their backs, Yakumo was a little concerned. When she was done, she slimed Naruto, then winked and said, good luck. She then turned back to the group and began to leave. One last thing. Just don't die. The teams then split up to create a plan of action and sign their consent forms. Naruto saw Anko making his way to his team as they were doing so. With a smile that suggested she was prepared to cause trouble, she said, well, if it isn't Naruto. Seeing Anko's bra and underwear fluttering in the wind from a pole outside the T&I building, Naruto asked with a knowing smile, Anko, you aren't still mad about last time, are you? She answered softly, don't think I won't get you back for what you did. Then she grinned and turned to leave. Naruto saw multiple teams staring at them as they headed to the gate to which they had been assigned after receiving their scroll. The rest of the team did the same. However, the additional pressure only strengthened their determination to pass this section of the test rather than making them feel uneasy. Yakumo even found the will to fight and show that her efforts had been worthwhile. One team was specifically targeting Naruto and his group as the other teams headed for the gates. The gates opened and the test began when the bell rang. Naruto's team was among the many that hurried into the forest. To gain the upper hand and make it easier to see anyone on the ground, they fled to the trees. About 20 minutes in, they happened to spot a group of ninja. They had adapted to remaining on the ground and were from the village of Hidden Rain. If they hadn't been missing one member, at least they would have been referred to as a team. If one of their members went missing, the entire team was wondering what they were going to do. As the entire team considered this, Naruto's senses were triggered when the third Rain Ninja team member emerged from the tree, seemingly composed of water, and charged Naruto. The two on the ground ascended the trunks of the two trees they were perched atop. In order to hide and wait until his team had captured another enemy team, the Rain Ninja had been squelching his chakra. If the Rain crew had been more astute, they would have allowed the predators they had just captured to pass by before the trap was set. To combat the Rain Ninja attacking him, Naruto spun and pulled a kunai from the knife pouch on his leg as the pincer trap closed. After calling out water style, ice darts jutsu and flashing through hand signals, Haku launched fast, moving water darts from her mouth in the direction of one of the Rain Ninja. As the lightning beast blasted out of Koga's palm and raced in the direction of the final Rain Ninja, he demonstrated a series of hand signals and called lightning style, Lightning Hound. After dodging the hound, the Rain Ninja was struck from behind by the hound, which came around and hit him with multiple senbon from Yakumo's senbon launcher in the chest. He doubled over and was struck in the face as Haku brought her knee up to smash into his face, and he wanted to fall. Meanwhile, the person approaching him was stabbed with a solid blade of ice in his shoulder, and she sent a fist into his gut, forcing the air out of his lungs. The gray and white wolf that Naruto had called upon to keep watch over their backs at the beginning of the test crashed into the back of the Rain Ninja and threw him to the ground, while the one engaged in combat went down. The unfortunate sap pinned beneath him was about to have his neck crushed by the wolf's jaw. The three ninja had been injured or rendered incapacitated during the less than 6-minute battle. As Koga approached the ninja who was pinned by Naruto's wolf, he asked, "So, are you going to hand over the scroll you have?" Haku and Yakumo moved to check the other two downed ninja when the Rain Ninja didn't respond, and Naruto stood alert, his metaphysical ears perked up using his sensory skill to check for threats. He said, "Check for the scroll." Koga leaned in and spoke softly as he grinned at the Rain Ninja in front of him after they failed to locate the scroll on either of the other two. The Rain Ninja's face blanched and he slowly reached for the scroll in his back pouch as he heard the words, "Hand over the scroll or my brother's wolf rips your head off." The Rain Ninja pulled out a heaven scroll and held it up, saying, "That man's scroll was too tempting to pass up. If we had known it would go this badly we would have gone after someone else." To make sure it was authentic, Koga examined the scroll and then sent a chakra pulse into it to break any transformation jutsu. As it turned out, the scroll was a fake, and an ordinary old scroll took its place. At this point, Koga's expression darkened as Naruto nodded to the wolf. The Rain Ninja screamed in agony as he wheezed, "Wait." But it was too late. The wolf applied enough pressure to the Rain Ninja's neck that he passed out from a lack of air. The wolf released its grip, leaving a tidy bite mark that would undoubtedly leave scars. Koga found the scroll in his pocket after searching his body. Yakumo said, "One down, one to go." Naruto turned to his wolf and said, "Thank you, Kase. Don't let your guard down, we haven't left the woods yet." Before the summons disappeared in a cloud of smoke, the wolf bowed its head and replied, "My pleasure, wolf's blood." They took to the tree and proceeded farther into the forest after making sure no one else was nearby. They hurried to locate their next target and complete this section of the test because they only had one scroll left. Naruto and his group soon found themselves wrapping up a battle with another group of enemy ninjas while navigating the Forest of Death. But after they were done, all they had left was a second scroll from heaven. Thus, they still had to locate and obtain an Earth scroll. To no one in particular, Yakumo said, "Too bad we didn't find an Earth scroll from that last team." As they kept their eyes open to avoid being ambushed again, Naruto remarked, "It simply means that we have 3 less opponents to deal with later." They were walking through the forest when Naruto happened to notice a nearby chakra signature. After Naruto informed the other members of the team, they made the decision to investigate on their own. When they got there, they discovered a dead tiger off to the side, 3 ninja from the Hidden Rain, and a lone girl with red hair and glasses who had just witnessed the death of her team. But these men didn't resemble the group that ambushed them at all. No, these guys appeared to be no more than 3 thugs, and they could hear the ninjas encircling the girl from the trees above. After her teammates perished due to being ambushed by the now dead cat, Naruto surmised that these 3 thugs had just so happened to come across her. Since she wasn't taking the test, the thugs must have killed it and decided to treat her however they wanted. You know, they never said anything about the members of a team that happened to survive the rest of the team dying. One of them replied. Another said, "Oh, I can think of a few things that we can do." The previous one said, "Yeah, I mean we did save her, she owes us now. Now the only question is which one of us gets to have first go." He was sent flying back a good few feet before he could finish that sentence due to a boot to the face and a blur. Where the rain ninja had been, Haku now stood. Without hesitation, she lowered her hands to the ground and cried out, "Water style, storm upheaval." At this, a tremendous volume of water descended from above, soaking the surrounding area and the other shinobi. Koga flashed hand signals and leapt down from the branch at this point. When Naruto saw what was going to happen, his body flickered and materialized beside the girl. He then grabbed her wrist and, with the girl in tow, his body flickered back onto the tree branch a second time. Haku leapt straight up onto the tree trunk. Lightning style, spiderweb. Koga's hands touched the water as he landed on it, and a web of lightning erupted across the water's surface. Since the shock hadn't completely worn off, he was able to eliminate the two rain ninjas who were standing there. The electricity that was flowing through their bodies caused them to fall to the ground, limp. The one on the floor, however, was mopped up during the assault. "You all right?" Naruto said in a somewhat hurried manner. The girl with the red hair answered, I'm fine, thanks." As a number of shuriken were hurled at him from the bushes, Naruto spun around, kunai drawn, and said, "Well, that's good, sorry about you getting wet though." Although he was able to deflect nearly all of them, two still managed to graze his leg and arm. As previously mentioned, shuriken throwers emerged from the bushes, only to stop when they realized who they had attacked. Hinata ran to him as Kiba and Shino were berating themselves, though for different reasons. She didn't even know what she was doing until she was standing in front of him, examining him while she extracted some of her homemade salve to apply to his wounds. "I'm so sorry, Naruto," she exclaimed. Naruto grinned down at the girl, making her heart practically burst with happiness. "Thanks, Hinata, but I'm okay." With Naruto directly in front of her, Hinata flushed intensely but forced herself not to faint. She blushed, and Haku asked, "Does she like Naruto?" Haku experienced an inexplicable feeling at this thought. Was she jealous? More than Naruto? She was still tense. Naruto saw. "Hinata-chan, what happened?" Kiba raised her voice as Hinata bowed her head. "The red-headed freak from Suna killed 3 enemy ninja without even batting an eye like it was nothing." Naruto immediately thought of Gaara at this point. He saw Kiba trembling as he turned to face him. Despite having some similarities to Menma, Kiba was still a ninja. Gaara must be extremely strong to be shaken this severely. As this thought went through his head, Ko said, "This Gaara character had the same feel to his chakra as you and your siblings do." This made Naruto's mind skip a beat for a moment before he thought again, but perhaps this was a good thing in a way because it would serve as a wake-up call for Kiba. Though he wasn't certain which of the tailed beasts was imprisoned within the sand ninja, Ko mentally nodded in agreement, saying, "So, he's a Jinchuriki too. How did he kill them?" Except for Naruto and Koga, Shino's words nearly made everyone jump. He encased them in the sand that he keeps in the gourd on his back. He then crushed them, killing them instantly. Neither Ko nor Naruto liked the way that sounded. "Hey, you guys don't happen to have an earth scroll, do you?" Yakumo said unexpectedly. Kiba snarled, but Hinata interrupted. "Yes, we started with it and got another from a team we took out, why?" Naruto grinned. "Perfect." As Koga reached into his utility pouch, Kiba dropped into a fighting stance and Akamaru began to growl. When Naruto saw the response to his brother's movement, he said, "Hold it, Kiba. We also ended up liberating a scroll we don't need, but our extra is a heaven scroll, so I propose a trade." Kiba relaxed as Koga held out the scroll. Hinata pulled out their extra scroll of earth. They decided to go together to the tower after exchanging scrolls. "Anyhow, we gotta go. Exams to finish and all that, bye," Naruto said, turning back to face the red-glassed head. He nodded to the others before they leapt up to 2 of the nearby tree branches. "Hey, don't leave me here, at least tell me your name, you jackass," the redhead screamed angrily. In an attempt to make her laugh, Naruto turned to face her and exclaimed, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze bye." After saying that, they left. "Wait, he's also an Uzumaki? That lying motherfucker. And why did his chakra feel weird?" "Bah, doesn't matter right now. That mummy prick told me I didn't have any living relatives and look who popped up." The redhead, unable to contain his curiosity, stared with wide eyes. After a moment, she began to return to the training grounds gates, huffing in frustration before turning to face her deceased teammates and exclaiming, Well, my teammates are dead, my boss lied about me not having any living relatives, and now I'm stuck in a forest filled with a bunch of monsters. Damn it. She had no idea that when she arrived at the training ground gates, a surprise would be in store for her. As the group moved toward the tower, Naruto and Kiba took the lead, while Haku and Hinata followed in rear. Guard, with the remaining teams forming the center. They managed to reach the tower after a total of 4 exhausting hours of travel from the gate. Team 12 soon found themselves staring at the writing on the wall after splitting up to go through their designated door number. Perplexed by the writing on the wall, Yakumo questioned, "What the heck are we supposed to do now?" At this point, Haku took out the man's scroll, Naruto took out the earth scroll, and Koga took out the heaven scroll he was carrying. Together they opened their scrolls, and I said, "I think we're supposed to open the scrolls." A voice that most of them recognized greeted them as smoke filled the room. "Congratulations on passing Team 12. Naruto smiled. "Iruka. Sensei, it's been a while." Iruka grinned. He turned to Haku and grinned, saying, "Yes, it has Naruto. I'm happy to see all 3 of you are doing well. I don't think we've been introduced. My name is Iruka Amino. When I taught these 3 in the academy, I got to know them." "I'm Haku, it's nice to meet you," said Haku with a smile. Naruto made a statement. "Hey, we should all go out sometime to catch up, but for now I think I just want to get some food and rest." "You must be exhausted," Iruka said with a smile. After guiding them into the main hall and showing them to their rooms, Iruka left them to their own devices. "I'll show you around as you'll be staying here until the second exam is complete," he said. Teams arrived one after the other over the course of the following 4 days, and on the 5th day, the final team arrived. All of the teams were then gathered and assembled in an arena inside the tower, with raised platforms on both sides that were secured with railings. The Hokage and each team's Jonin sensei of those who had passed were present, as was a large pair of arms with their hands in the shape of the ram seal. When all of the examinees were at last assembled, Minato nodded his head and gestured to a Jonin with his hair tucked under a bandana to address them. "It's nice to meet everyone. I'm Hayate Gecko, and I'll be your proctor for the remainder of the test," he said, then coughed. "I want to start by congratulating each and every one of you on passing the second exam." Hayate coughed again and said, "But I didn't expect so many candidates to actually make it." Many genin were concerned that the man would faint from his sickly complexion, but since he was a jonin, that wasn't likely. Hokage Sama decided to slightly alter this year's exams because there are so many of you. Some of the genin questioned whether he should have been in a hospital bed after he coughed again, as if he were about to pass out. "With that, I'll give him the floor to explain it, so please pay attention," he said. Minato smirked briefly before his expression turned serious. "Before I start with the explanation of the upcoming event, I want to tell you all the real reason behind these exams." Most of the genin looked perplexed and curious after he finished speaking. "I want you to know, without any sugarcoating or lies, that this exam is here to promote and show off the prestige and power of each of the villages that are attending," Minato said in a stern tone, his eyes losing all traces of the kindness that had previously been there. Surveying the group of applicants, Hayate stated, "There are still too many applicants here. Therefore, we will need to have a set of preliminary rounds. Your performance here will determine whether you advance to the main stage or not." What? What on earth are you talking about? Isn't this merely to determine who possesses the necessary skills to be a chunin? Menma yelled. "Naturally, that is also true. This test determines whether you are all qualified to be chunin, but there is another explanation as well, which I tried to clarify earlier. Numerous powerful and influential people will evaluate each of you in this exam to determine whether you meet the requirements to be a chunin. Therefore, whoever stands out and shines more in their village will attract more customers and, consequently, more missions to their village. The opposite is true for those who confuse their village's name. No matter how small your village is, I want you all to prove that you can shine." As they listened to Minato's speech, the genin developed resolute expressions. After he was done, Hayate said, "Now, before we begin. That's what I want everyone to know going forward." Cough. He coughed again before continuing, saying, "So, those of you who believe you can't go on, please raise your hands as the preliminaries will begin immediately." Kabuto raised his hand in response, declaring that his chakra was completely depleted. "You are being judged as individuals. You no longer need all members of your team to pass their respective battles in order for you to advance." Minato raised an eyebrow at this point because this was the same person Ibiki claimed Naruto had left the note for, but he was unable to inform him that they were pursuing him, so he would have to follow him around to find out exactly what he was doing. "Is there anyone else who wants to leave?" Hayate nodded when no one else spoke up, saying, Very well, then those who will be continuing, please make your way to the balconies. Those who are not, please follow the chunin who will take you back to the village. The other competitors moved to the stands, and when they were all prepared, Hayate moved forward and gestured to the monitor on the wall. A1. On.1 format will be used for these preliminary matches. Additionally, these matches will be paired at random. These contests will go on until one of the competitors is incapacitated, gives up, or passes away. Now then, the first match pairing will now be selected, Hayate said, coughing again. As proctor, I have a certain amount of authority to make executive decisions when a battle seems hopeless to try and persevere as many lives as possible. Before choosing two fighters, the screen began to flicker through pairings to determine who would face off in the first match. The first will be Sasuke Uchiha versus Yoroi Ikado. Hayate continued, will both competitors make their way to the arena floor? Hayate asked if they were both ready when they were facing each other, and they both nodded, saying, very well, start. After a while, the fight continued in this manner until Sasuke used a move that made Lee tense, at which point Naruto noticed that he was struggling because his opponent was somehow absorbing his chakra through his peculiar technique. Is something wrong, Lee? Lee bowed his head after giving him a quick glance. Sasuke-san performed the dancing leaf shadow exactly as it should have been done, Naruto. The fact that he would mimic my move in that way saddens me. When did he copy your move? Scowled Naruto. I challenged him before the first exam, Lee sighed. I tried to finish him with that move during the spar before Gai-sensei intervened. Looks like he's had it, Hayate said, approaching the fallen Yoroi and giving him a quick once. Over. Seeing this, Sasuke was able to drop to his knees. Hayate then coughed and said, the winner is Sasuke Uchiha. As Sasuke left the arena floor with the medics to receive treatment for whatever it was that he had been grabbing at his shoulder for, Naruto glanced down at him. Naruto noticed that his respect for Sasuke had somewhat diminished as he considered what had just transpired. But to go so far as to copy an Ali's jutsu without hesitation or even asking, is he really that self-centered? Yes, Naruto-kun, I agree with you, Gai said, nodding. Sasuke's use of such tactics has tainted his springtime of youth. As the names spun, everyone's eyes were on the board, and Naruto sighed when Zaku Ibumi vs Shino Aburame was announced. Which sucker is that? Exclaimed one of the sound ninja who had fired at Kabuto. Shino just began to walk to the arena floor. When the two opponents faced off, Naruto saw that the sound ninja had both of his arms in slings. Evidently, he had been hurt during the second exam section. Is he really going to try and fight Shino in his condition? Naruto asked himself. Shino told his opponent before the fight even began that he would lose if he attempted to fight him in this condition, and Naruto had to agree because he didn't see how this could go wrong for the guy. In fact, he was wondering why Hayate hadn't called the match right away because it would have been a one-sided fight from the beginning. Who is this guy from Zaku? Lee answered Naruto's question out loud. He is a most unyouthful sound ninja, Naruto. For the sake of conversation, Naruto asked, you've seen him fight. Lee grimaced at the thought of Sasuke grinning while taking pleasure in the suffering he inflicted. Yes, Naruto. He uses air pressure to attack from a distance, but during a fight with Sasuke his arms were both dislocated. Hinata, who had been standing next to Naruto and Haku, said, it won't help him against Shino. Her voice was full of confidence in her teammate. Hinata. Chan blushed when Naruto said, I'm glad you're confident he will win, Hinata, Chan. As the battle continued, it appeared that the Zaku man was not as crippled as he initially believed, but it would seem to be of little use to him because Shino had let his insects loose and now he was trapped between them and himself. Shino then spoke up. My insects will swarm you if you use your good arm on me, and if you concentrate on them, you'll expose yourself to me. Having an ace in the hole is always a good idea. With his first arm pointing at Shino, Zaku was able to move his other arm to point at the bugs, covering both sides in the process. As you mentioned, you always have an advantage. Yes. Before making his move, Zaku yelled, I'll blow you away. But his boast was in vain because everyone's attention was caught by a sudden bang, and Zaku was now kneeling on the ground, staring at his two bloody arms in disbelief. What? How? Through the pain, Zaku asked, and Shino approached him calmly before speaking. You see, my insects were already working to seal off those annoying windholes in your hands while I was offering you that helpful advice. Shino calmly said, an ace in the hole is good, but two aces are better. He then slammed his fist into Zaku's face, flattening him, and he turned to return to his spot on the balcony. Coughing, Hayate said, winner, Shino Aburame. Hinata and Kiba congratulated Shino as he stepped onto the balcony, and Naruto slapped him in the fist as he passed. Naruto said, "Nice work in there," Shino answered. With a determined expression, Naruto nodded to him and said, "Thanks, but you better win your matches too." When the next match, Masumi Tsurugi vs Kankuro, was displayed, the screen began to flash through names once more. The other member of Kabuto's team was defeated quickly because of his overconfidence, believing he had defeated his opponent only to discover that he had been fighting a puppet and was now in his opponent's trap. The Sand Shinobi Naruto had just confronted his opponent exactly where he wanted him, now wrapped in the puppet's arms that were constricted until every bone in his body was broken. "The winner is Kankuro," Hayate declared as Masumi was taken away on a stretcher. The next pairing, Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka, was selected after the board once more rotated through names. "Please let Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka enter the arena," Hayate inquired. The fight's names made Naruto tense, and he turned to smile at Haku, asking, "How likely do you think Ino is to win?" Haku grinned. "Ino has gotten pretty good since you and I helped her with her training." Hayate said, "Begin." Since Sakura had trained harder than her opponent for this exam with Naruto and Haku's help, it was obvious that she was more skilled than her opponent. When she connected with her mind transfer jutsu, Naruto yelled, "You got her now, Ino." The battle that everyone had assumed would be fairly even ended up being a little more lopsided. "Take her by the reins." When Sakura heard Naruto supporting Ino, she became a little irate and asked, "Why is he supporting Ino? What has she ever done for him?" "What have I ever done for him? How about being his friend for one?" she asked, opening the pink-haired girl's eyes as Ino could hear her thoughts. "Oh, and you punched him when he startled you that one time back in the academy. I mean, have you ever talked to him or even gotten to know him at all? All you ever did was treat him like he had the plague and or avoid him." "I've been nice to him before." Sakura defended herself quickly after realizing that Ino could hear her thoughts, but she still gasped in her head. "I bet you can't even show me one memory where you were nice to him or even talked to him like he was a normal person," Ino said, shaking Sakura's head slightly. "Prove it." Ninja art. Forgotten memories jutsu. Sakura's previous memories involving Naruto were then displayed to the two of them as if they were slides on a projector. Sakura defended her other self by saying, "Oh yeah? I'll show you, Ino pig." At that point, she began searching through her memories, but she was unable to find even one. She continued to search until she eventually found one, and just as she was about to tell Ino to retract her statement, she looked more closely at the memory, only to be shocked to see that it was not what she had assumed. Thanks to Ino's jutsu effects, the memory was vivid for both of them to see. Sakura, 7, was playing in the park with Ino and a few other children when the ball they were using was kicked over by the swings. She ran over to retrieve it and discovered it next to an occupied swing, but the boy on it was not swinging. Instead, he was staring at the ground as if he were depressed about something. Sakura approached and picked up the ball, and the boy's slightly vacant blue eyes gave her a slightly unsettling look. "Oh, sorry, do you want to use the swing?" The other two swings next to him were both empty, so it was strange that the boy asked her when she could have swung by simply taking one of the open swings. Sakura held up the ball and tried not to look at the boy as he looked at her, but something about him made her feel uncomfortable. "No, that's okay, I just came to get the ball back." "Oh okay," he replied, "I like your hair by the way." Sakura blinked and stammered at this point, feeling uneasy around the boy as if he had a presence that made her want to leave. "Oh, thanks," she said. She heard a gentle farewell from behind her as she hurried back to her friends, saying, I have to go, don't want to keep the others waiting, bye." When she returned, Ino asked Sakura who the boy was, and she replied, "I don't know who he is. He's a little creepy, but at least he said, 'I have nice hair.'" And that was the end of the memory. Sakura was shocked to learn that Ino was correct, and Ino used Sakura's body to forfeit the match. "You know, it's not too late," Ino said, getting back into her body and approaching Sakura while leaning in to avoid being overheard. Seeing that Sakura was still deep in thought, she pulled her former best friend back up to the balcony. When they reached the point where Naruto was standing, Sakura was unable to even look at him as he congratulated Ino. Instead, she continued walking until she was beside her lone teammate and took a seat. "So, if she comes to try and apologize, please be nice to her, if not for her, then for me, as a friend," Ino said, pausing as Naruto barely noticed that the names Tenten and Tamari were called. "Don't worry, Ino-chan. You know I'm not that kind of person," Naruto said, grinning at her sincerely. "I'll accept her apology if she truly means it." However, she will need to put in a lot of effort and time to prove it. I won't just pretend that everything is fine between us." Without thinking, Ino grinned and gave Naruto a quick hug, but as she did so, she felt a sensation in her chest and asked herself, "Wait, what is this feeling that I'm having? Do I have feelings for Naruto?" Haku became a little annoyed at this, her jealousy of Naruto rising once more. Ino stepped back, blushing slightly, and said, "Thanks Naruto, you're a really nice guy." Then she walked over to her team. Tenten and Temari's fight had ended while she was speaking with Naruto, so Shikamaru and Kin were called down to fight next. As Ino passed Shikamaru, she saw that he was about to back off, so she gave him a friendly shove and said, "Do your best Shikamaru." She then bumped him just hard enough to send him over the railing. Naruto's focus shifted to the arena and the impending battle between Shikamaru and Kin. Jutsu Kin discovered she couldn't move after Shikamaru caught her in his shadow possession, so the fight ended quickly. "This is checkmate, just surrender." Now that she had to imitate Shikamaru's movements, Kin was both angry and afraid. As they drew shuriken and aimed their attacks, Kin asked, "What do you think you're doing? You have to harm yourself before you can harm me." Shikamaru said, "We'll just see about that one, won't we?" As they both attacked and ducked by quickly leaning back, her family was unable to see the wall she hit her head against, which knocked her out. Hayate declared the match over as her body struck the ground, recording, "Winner, Shikamaru Nara." As Ino made his way back to the spectator area, he exclaimed, "Nice job Shikamaru, way to get that big brain of yours to work out a win." Shikamaru returned to his team and was high-fiving when Choji said, "Nice work Shikamaru." The screen began to cycle through names once more before stopping on the next set of fighters, which was Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze vs Kiba Inazaka. When Kiba yelled that he and Akamaru had just won the lottery, Naruto simply glanced at the rest of his team. At this point, he couldn't help but laugh at the irony of how they had helped each other pass the second section of the exam. After giving Naruto a sly glance, Koga uttered the words, "Show him who's top dog." After smiling, Yakumo uttered the words, "Make him cry, uncle." Before she said, "Show the little puppy what happens when he picks a fight with the big bad wolf," Haku chuckled, trying not to laugh out loud. Naruto grinned at this, recalling how tough he had tried to come across and how Kiba had warned him to avoid Hinata on that day in the academy. It appeared that the dog and the wolf would finally discover who was the alpha male. Kiba couldn't help but smile as he said, well, it looks like this is going to be fun," as the two finally descended to the arena floor. "Naruto, don't be too upset if you lose to me." Naruto calmly replied, a faint smirk on his face, "Don't take me lightly Kiba, or you just might find you bit off more than you can chew." As Akamaru jumped out of Kiba's hoodie and barked at Naruto, Kiba simply threw back his head and laughed, which only made Naruto snicker because Akamaru was attempting to establish his superiority, but all he was doing at the moment was making Naruto laugh inwardly. As he continued to laugh, Kiba remarked, "Akamaru, you watch this, I'm going to take care of this myself." "That has to be the funniest thing you have ever said Naruto." At this point, Hayate said, "Are you both prepared? Start." With a flash of hand signals, Naruto called, "Fire style, fireball jutsu." Growling, Kiba bolted forward, throwing a barrage of strikes that Naruto dodged and or blocked while Naruto did the same, forcing Kiba to block and dodge as well before the jump back. As soon as Hayate finished speaking, Kiba fell to all fours, rushing Naruto and striking him with an elbow to the gut, or at least that would have happened if Naruto hadn't dodged back, causing Kiba to whiff. Kiba was able to move out of the way, but not before being burned in multiple places by the ball of flames that erupted from his mouth. The most unimpressive shinobi in his class, Kiba, was not to be outdone, so he snarled, "Tunneling Fang." He then launched himself at Naruto, whipping himself into a miniature cyclone. Naruto ducked out of the way and he prepared another strike, wind style. Beast Wave Palm. With a single slashing motion of his hand, a razor sharp wave of wind sliced toward Kiba. The Inazaka shifted and dodged with feral grace with his ninja art of beast mimicry. All fours jutsu. As he charged forward, Naruto and Kiba engaged in another melee. Those who knew better simply smirked and asked themselves, is this really the same Naruto? Asuma spoke first, saying, "I'll say this much, whatever Yugo's training methods are, they worked." Naruto flashed through another set of hand signs, biting his thumb and slamming his palm to the ground while screaming, "Summoning jutsu." A plume of smoke then appeared, and as it dissipated, a wolf the size of Kuromaru, with black and red streaked fur, stood next to Naruto. Kiba blinked, asking, Where did this kid get a summon contract, and with wolves no less? His shock caused him to drop to his knees, only to have the wolf pass over him and land behind him as it turned to strike again. While he was distracted by the wolf, Akamaru charged at it, drawing it attention, only to have it swat him away with its paw. Naruto approached Kiba's back, but Kiba heard him coming and spun on his heels, snarling, tunneling Fang. With that, he launched himself at Naruto, whipping himself into a miniature cyclone. Because he was so close, he was unable to fully dodge and took a glance that knocked him back, but he managed to get up on his feet in a crouch. Akamaru approached Kiba, growling at the wolf as it approached Naruto's side. "At least you don't lack spirit, little one," the wolf said in a feminine voice, with a faint chuckle. "But it seems like your bark is worse than your bite." Kiba growled, "We'll just see whose bite is worse." With those words, he flicked a food pill to Akamaru just before he took one himself. Akamaru's fur turned red, becoming more rabid as he growled, while Kiba became more feral as his canines became more noticeable and his nails turned into claws. As Kiba prepared his next move, Akamaru hopped on his back. Man-beast clone. At this point, both Kibas hurried Naruto and the she-wolf, and Kiba threw a set of smoke bombs out to blind them both. The dog then changed into an exact replica of Kiba. Kiba roared, "Man! Beast ultimate taijutsu, Fang over Fang," before the smoke cloud had fully expanded. As the pair transformed into a set of miniature cyclones, they tore through the smoke cloud, and when it cleared, a tall, black, and red-haired woman wearing a regal black battle kimono with red trim and a red obi with a shakuho in her right hand stood next to Naruto. When the smoke cleared, Kiba's jaw and the jaws of several others in the arena stands fell to the ground in awe of the stunning women. Akamaru, however, had no such issues, as he barked at Kiba, bringing him out of his daze. "You really think that a simple transformation jutsu in the form of a sexy woman is going to stop me?" Kiba joked, attempting to hide the fact that her appearance astounded him. "Oh, she's real. This isn't transformation jutsu. Say hello again, Akiko." The women raised their voices when Naruto was introduced. "I never get tired of the way they react the first time they see me in this form," Akiko said. After blinking in surprise, Kiba said, "Wait, you mean that wolf is actually her?" Kiba let out an incredulous roar. "Oh, is the tiny puppy afraid now?" With a smile on her now human face, Akiko reprimanded, "I don't bite." Much, Anko thought, "I like her," and laughed to herself at this remark. Both Kiba and Akamaru charged at her taunting, anticipating another Fang encounter, but Naruto and Akiko hurried forward, using their combined haste to split the pair apart so that it would be more difficult for them to fight together. As Akamaru faced the now human-looking she-wolf, he growled and sped forward on all fours to strike Akiko, who grinned at his carelessness and raised the shakuho to strike, bringing it down with a single fluid motion. She struck him square on the nose. The loud crack caused some people to wince, as Akamaru now had a broken nose and was whimpering in pain. As Akiko stood, she said in a low voice, "Bad dog. Learn to heal." Kurenai was stunned and trying not to laugh at the same time by covering her mouth with her hand, while the rest of the room was in a state of hysteria and shock, with some people trying not to laugh at the statement and others in shock over what had just happened. Naruto used one of the clones back as a springboard to launch himself into the air ahead of Kiba, but he brought his foot down in a spinning heel dropkick to Kiba's face, sending him back to the arena floor with a loud impact as his face hit the floor. Kiba attempted another spiral fang, but was surrounded by clones and launched into the air by 3 of them. As the medics loaded him up to be taken to the infirmary, Hinata met the medics before they took Kiba away and gave him some of her special salve. At this point, Naruto smiled because he still had the one she gave him when she was inspecting his wounds in the forest. As he made his way back to the balcony, all eyes were on him, and Gaara began to smile as he couldn't wait to fight him. Hayate walked over and examined Kiba, groaning when his head was raised to check him for damage. As he made his way back to his team, he received a number of fist bumps and congratulations from his teammates and others. Yugo put her hand on his shoulder and grinned, saying, "You did good in there." Naruto grinned as the screen flashed through names once more, until it came to a stop on Fu vs Masa Onigami. Would Fu and Masa Onigami please enter the arena? While a lean boy with brown hair and a leaf Hite.8 hanging around his waist casually made his way down to the arena floor until both of them were standing in front of each other. A lithe girl with mint green hair and a hidden waterfall tied around her arm leapt the railing and landed in a crouch on the arena floor at his request. Stepping back, Hayate said, "Start." Following this, the brown-haired boy narrowly avoided being hit by the green Haired Girl's hard right blow, which was aimed at her opponent's head. He then used hand signals to flash his hand signals before yelling, "Fire style! Phoenix Flower Jutsu!" He then spat a barrage of tiny fireballs at his opponent. A brown haired girl from the balcony was calling out to her teammate, "Come on Masa, show her what you made of," during the fight. Naruto recognized the girl as Sasuke's older sister Setsuna, who graduated from the academy the year before Naruto's class did. She was also a friend of Naruto's, and when he was younger, she even assisted him in learning some of the fundamentals of chakra control, that is, until he fled. When Masa sent a high kick aimed at her head, she ducked and tried to sweep his legs out from under him. He spun with the motion and landed, then flashed through another set of hand signs as he shouted, "Fire style! Fireball Jutsu!" He then launched a ball of fire at her, jumping high into the air and flashing through a quick set of hand signs before she called out. The fight was undoubtedly fast-paced, as the girl Fu appeared to be controlling the fight's pace. Secret Ninjutsu. Scaled Sneak Jutsu. She opened her mouth and exhaled a fine powder that resembled mist. The powder reflected the fireball's light as well as the natural light in the room, blinding many people, including Masa. His eyes refocused. Fu was gone, but only for a few seconds, as he heard a shout from above, "Hidden Waterfall Hurricane." He looked up in time to be struck by a whirlwind of force in a single blow, plowing Masa into the ground. When the dust settled, Masa was on the floor and refused to get up. The girl jumped and pumped her fist in the air as Hayate called the match winner. Fu. Her two teammates appeared unimpressed. The medics arrived to retrieve Masa, and Fu just picked him up and put him on the stretcher they had before declaring victory. "That was a great match. We should totally be friends and have a rematch sometime." When the next set of names were drawn at random, the screen finally stopped on Mito Uzumaki. Namikaze vs. Kegan. Masa never answered, but she took the moan that came out of his lips as a yes and grinned as she went back to her team. She would have face-palmed at her brother's outburst as if she would have given anything less, but she had to concentrate on her opponent, so she would have told him he was being a fool. Menma yelled, "Show him what you made of Mito," as the two descended to the arena floor. The match began when Hayate raised his hand and yelled, "Begin." Without waiting for the other to initiate contact, the two rushed to close the distance and exchanged a barrage of blows, spinning, dodging, parrying, and striking before splitting apart as each fighter attempted their next move. Kegan launched a wave of water shuriken at the redhead, and Mito made a single hand sign before calling, "Wind style, air bullets." As a flurry of air bullets met the wave of shuriken, Mito was already flashing through another set of hand signs when she launched a wave of shuriken, calling out, "Wind style gale palm." She then used the blast of air from her hands to propel the shuriken even faster at her opponent. Kegan saw the impending attack and attempted to dodge, but two of the shuriken managed to hit, causing small gashes in his arm and leg, but he knew they weren't incapacitating. Water style. Raging waves. Mito fired back as she completed her final hand gesture, causing a tiny stream of water to shoot out of his mouth. Wind style. Great breakthrough. The approaching wave of water was met by a burst of wind. Kegan was shocked that this genin was pushing him this hard, even though he already knew that he didn't need to win because he and Yoro were both actually jonin and only here as Fu's handlers. Nevertheless, this gave Mito a chance to strike, and he chose to let it land, only to have the blow be followed by several more in quick succession, the last of which sent him into a wall, playing possum to make it appear as though he had been knocked down. Although no one really noticed, Yoro and Kegan nodded to each other as they were taken away by the medics. As Hayate called the match, the medics came out onto the arena floor to collect Kegan, who smiled to himself for his performance. Mito received a round of congratulations from her brother and sister as well as those close to her team as she made her way over to them. The screen went through the name selection process again, only to choose the next group of fighters, Hinata Hyuga vs Neji Hyuga. The majority of the Leaf Ninja in the room fell silent at this point because they knew the match was heavily skewed. The tension in the room was so intense that it could have been broken with a kunai as the two faced each other, and Neji spooked, "I never thought that you and I would have to face each other, Hinata." Weakly, Hinata replied, "Nor I, Neji." At this point, Hayate said, "Start." Neji said, "Before we do this, a word of advice, withdraw now, Hinata-san," before either of them moved. "You are aware that being a ninja was never your calling. You are too innocent and kind. Additionally, you actively steer clear of conflict. Even though you don't believe in yourself, you couldn't bear to disappoint your teammates, could you?" When Hinata looked down, she said, "I will not back down from this battle, and you will suffer injuries. I will be the one to leave the winner. Fate is not on your side. No matter how much we would like it, We cannot alter who we are or what fate has in store for us. You're wrong about why I entered the exams, but maybe I can show you that you're wrong about me, Hinata said softly, activating her Byakugan as she looked up into Neji's eyes and assumed a combat stance. At this point, Neji adopted a somewhat similar but not identical posture before answering, as you wish, but you cannot win this fight nor can you change who you are. As this was happening up in the balcony, Naruto was furious about what Neji had said, and the rest of his team had noticed that his hands were gripping the railing so tightly that his knuckles were white. In fact, Koga, Yakumo, Haku, and Yugo all thought they could hear the railing creak a little. Naruto wanted to jump the rail and slam Neji into the ground. According to his reasoning, he couldn't have done anything that would have changed his previous circumstances. In fact, he should have been powerless to alter the way that everyone ignored him and would have been unable to do anything about it. However, the fact that Naruto stood here was a contradiction to this, a glaring flaw in Neji's thinking. One of the lessons he had learned while with the wolves was that if you wanted things to change, you had to give up your fear, doubt, and hesitation and turn to face the mountain in front of you. This was one of the most important lessons he had learned, and it was evident to Neji that Naruto was glaring at him with an intensity that would have bored right through him and made any other Leaf Genin in the room turn away. Naruto had trained with Hinata back in the academy, where he had encouraged her to reach for her own goal and to get stronger her own way. As a result, Hinata came up with her own fighting strategy. Neji's eyes returned to Hinata, and he triggered his Byakugan, and the battle started. The two Hyuga locked in a deadly dance of the gentle fist style that their clan members preferred, but Hinata's movements differed from Neji's. His strikes were precise and rigid, while Hinata's were more fluid and graceful, allowing her to bend and weave. The two went at it without hesitation, and Neji noticed that although Hinata had improved, something was different about her strikes. When one of the strikes managed to land, but not on a chakra point, Neji felt a shock of electricity run up his left arm, numbing it. Neji's eyes widened as he briefly disengaged, looking to his arm and then back to Hinata. To the surprise of everyone, including her father, who had come to watch the matches and wonder if his daughter had gotten any stronger, Hinata said, "If you want to know what you're feeling, it's the effect of my lightning chakra nature added to my strikes. By combining a chakra nature change to my strikes, they become more potent." As the fight went on, Hinata surprised Neji once more with a blow to his head as she called out, 8 trigrams vacuum palm. Neji's eye widened, but he was able to avoid the blast of compressed air aimed at his head and aimed a counterattack. At this point, Hinata disengaged by doing a back flip to make some space as she gathered herself into her stance once more, only to have her opponent rush her, which made her smirk as her cousin crashed headfirst into the trap she had set for him. As Neji closed in, she made a hand seal, and 2 clones now stood beside Hinata and charged. Neji saw through her ruse and defeated both clones as the real Hinata struck. Neji grinned as he used his rotation to block the incoming attack and knock her back, only to realize that he had stepped on the wrong foot because the real Hinata was approaching him right as his rotation was coming to an end. As the rotation came to an end, Hinata was able to get inside his guard and land a palm heel strike to his right shoulder, rendering his right arm temporarily useless. As the battle went on, it appeared that Hinata might have won if Neji hadn't been able to close the distance and hit him with 8 trigrams 4 palms, which caused her to take a lot of damage. When Neji went in to finish her, Hinata caught him off guard by striking, protective 8 trigrams 4 palms. At this point, razor thin blades of pure chakra sliced through the air, nearly killing Neji if he hadn't been able to use his rotation at the last second to protect himself. With her chakra depleted, Hinata collapsed to the ground, exhausted and exhausted, exhausted and exhausted. Hayate called the match at this point, but Neji couldn't help but stare at Hinata's unconscious form as she was removed from the arena floor for a brief moment. "Well, it seems that you have indeed changed Hinata and even become stronger than I thought possible. And it seems you have him to thank for that," Neji thought, knowing that Naruto must have assisted her in her training, but in the end it ended up the same way I said it would. As that thought crossed his mind, he turned and walked off the floor and returned to his team, but not before Heishi continued to stare after his daughter as she was removed from the field. If he hadn't witnessed it firsthand, he would never have believed Hinata could have developed to the point where she nearly defeated Neji, but he couldn't help but feel that something wasn't quite right. Where had she learned to combine her chakra nature with her strikes, and more importantly, who had taught her this, and why? Neji knew that no Hyuga had taught her this, but it suddenly clicked when he looked into the balcony and saw the boy who had been glaring at him. The Hokage's eldest son, who had been the one to assist in training his daughter, he was certain. Sai versus Narumi Uzumaki. Namikaze at this point, both competitors made their way down to the arena floor, Or at least that's what would have happened if Sai hadn't raised his hand and yelled, "Proctor, I'd like to forfeit." This caused most of the spectators on the balcony to stare at him in confusion, while Narumi's outburst caught their attention next. The board began spinning through names once more before finally landing on the next set of names to fight in the arena. "Oh no you don't, I entered this exam to prove I have what it takes to be a Chunin, don't you dare back out." Confused too, Richi turned to face Sai and said, "Sai, what are you doing?" He questioned his pupil, perplexed by Sai's behavior, but Sai appeared unfazed by his expression and continued to fake a smile. Richi blinked, but he nodded and confirmed to Hayate, "Sorry sensei, but to be honest I'm pretty sure I am not strong enough to beat her." The winner by forfeit is Narumi Uzumaki. Namikaze. At this point, the rest of the room began to perspire at the girl's antics, as Narumi began to complain that her opponent was a coward and that it wasn't fair that she won in this manner. Richi, however, questioned whether this was just Sai being Sai or whether he actually believed he would have lost the fight and chose to withdraw rather than fight a losing battle. If the latter, it demonstrated good judgment, and if so, it also demonstrated that Sai was the most prepared for this test out of the three of his students. Then, as the next two fighters, Setsuna Uchiha and Kinya Futomi, made their way to the arena, the screen whirled through names again, with Narumi furiously beside her brother and sister. The grass ninja glanced up and down at Setsuna before raising an eyebrow and saying, "From what I know of the Uchiha I would have thought you would be more imposing." Setsuna gave her opponent a fierce look in response to this remark, saying, "Don't worry, when I wipe the floor with you it won't make a difference how imposing I look." Before any more derogatory remarks could be made, Hayate said, "Start." The grass ninja dodged and weaved, only to fire back with a barrage of kunai, and Setsuna rolled out of the way and stood up. The two rushed each other, but Setsuna had the upper hand in this battle as her Sharingan flared to life. They exchanged a series of blows before Setsuna flashed through a series of hand signs as she called, "Fire Style. Phoenix Flower Jutsu." Setsuna planted her feet and weaved through a series of hand signals, while Kinya grinned as she squared her stance and said, "Ninja Art. Needle Senbon." Her long hair came to life and spewed a lethal shower of razor sharpened hair needles. "Fire Style. Fireball Jutsu." At this, a huge ball of fire erupted from her mouth, burning the projectiles that were coming directly at Kinya. She rolled away from the approaching ball of flame, and when she stood up, Kinya leaned forward, now on all fours. As her hair transformed into long spears that shot forward to impale Setsuna, she cried, "Needle Spear. Adoshi." The young Uchiha tried to close with her opponent by weaving through a series of hand signals as she did. "Ninja Art. Needle Jizo." Setsuna was taken aback by the jutsu, but she also knew that it had weaknesses because it couldn't cover her entire body. With her Sharingan active, she was able to analyze the jutsu and determine its weakness. With a single, well-placed blow, Setsuna managed to strike the unprotected part of her opponent's face, which was one of the only spots that the needle Jizo couldn't fully protect, causing her opponent's jutsu to dissipate as her hair returned to normal after she was flung back a few feet by the force of her blow. Kinya managed to land on her feet, but Setsuna was on her in a moment, with a kunai drawn and ready to cut her throat. There was nothing else Kinya could do, so her opponent's only response was to yield. She responded softly but loudly enough for the proctor to hear, "I submit." Hayate declared, winner Setsuna Uchiha. As she returned to the balcony and the rest of her team, the screen went through the selection process once more before deciding on the next pair of fighters, Koga Uzumaki, Namikaze vs. Jura. Hayate then called for the two competitors to head to the arena floor. Jura, who had orange hair, was dressed in a grayish-white vest with red trimmings, a fishnet undershirt, and black pants with black arm bracers. The two were now facing each other, and Hayate yelled, "Begin." The battle then began when Jura raised his hands in a single hand sign and a tiny stream of stone poured from his mouth to create a stone golem that charged alongside him at Koga full speed. Koga used a brief series of hand signs to activate his jutsu, Lightning Style. Lightning Hound. The beast charged forward in a blur, directly towards Jura, but was stopped by Jura's golem, which was blasted into pieces, and Jura broke through the dust the golem had left behind after striking. After exchanging brief blows, the two switched sides, with Jura snapping through a series of hand signals before slamming his hands to the ground and declaring, "Earth Style." Rupturing Earth Palm. At this point, the stone in front of him broke and split, and he jumped out of the way to avoid the attack, only to discover that it was a feint as Jura closed the gap and landed a blow that sent Koga back a few feet. He knew he would later feel the full force of that blow plus the bruises, so he gritted his teeth and brought his hands up into a single hand sign. creating a threesome of shadow clones. Koga rushed his opponent as they closed. All 4 Kogas flashed through the same set of hand signs. Water style. Raging waves. 4 streams of water erupted as these words were finished, striking his opponent, or they would have, but for his opponent's quick thinking, as Jura merely slammed his hand into the ground. A section of the floor flipped up, as if on springs, to block the incoming torrent when someone yelled, "Earth style. Terra shield." With a single hand gesture, both of Jura's hands appeared to turn to stone as the skin turned a dark brown and both fists came forward, Earth style. Iron skin. Without missing a beat, Jura eliminated all 3 clones without even slowing his charge. This was after the water had stopped and the earth shield had fallen back into place, allowing Jura to charge. Both the sight and the memory of how severely his clones had been struck made Koga swallow a little. It was as if a boulder had struck him at high speed. Jura's fist smashed through the place where he had been standing a second before and into the ground, burring themselves up to the elbow, but he managed to avoid his opponent's impending attack. Koga flashed through hand signals with just seconds to spare, the final one concluding as Jura released his arms. When Koga called, "Lightning style. Spider web," he brought his hands down. A web of electricity then spread out, entangling Jura because he was too close to escape in time. A violent jolt of concentrated electricity arced through his body, causing him to fall to the ground, letting out a groan as his eyes rolled back in his head. Hayate then declared, "Winner Koga Uzumaki, Namikaze." When Koga returned to the balcony and his team, he was met with high fives and compliments, and Yugo grinned at him and said, "Good job in there." Minato then signaled for some of the Jonin to repair the damaged arena floor, and the screen came back to life as the selection process began again. However, when the next 2 names to compete, Yakumo Kurama vs Yoro, came up, Yugo grinned and put a hand on her shoulder to support her student. "Show him what you made of out there." This gave Yakumo more confidence as she made her way to the arena floor. Her sensei was correct. All the missions and training had brought her to this point, and she wouldn't leave this arena without knowing she had given it her all. Yoro quickly found himself standing in front of each other on the arena floor when Hayate called, "Begin." With that one word, the match began, and the 2 sprang into action, both jumping back to make room for what they had planned. Without wasting any time, he raised his hands and flashed through a series of hand signs, saying, "Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu." The single shuriken multiplied to about 30 as the wave of shuriken quickly approached Yakumo, who dodged out of the way and drew a series of hand signs before yelling, "Lightning illusion. Flash pillar." At this point, Yakumo's body glowed as if she had just been hit by a lightning bolt, and the light became so intense that everyone in the room had to cover their eyes. When the light finally died down, Yakumo was gone. Yoro dodged the blow from behind and grabbed her arm, and with a single motion, he pinned her to the ground on her back. Thinking he had won the match, he prepared a strike, but Yakumo faded as a kick hit him in the face, sending him backwards, though he was able to escape the tumble in a crouch. Yakumo was standing where he had been just a moment ago in a ready position, but Yoro snorted. "Should have known genjutsu. After all, the Kurama clan is well known for it." He grinned. "Too bad it's only useful when your opponent is least expecting it." After saying, "Well, aren't you well informed? However, I have more at my disposal than just genjutsu," Yakumo merely grinned and said, "Well, aren't you well informed? However, I have more at my disposal than just genjutsu." At that point, her body seemed to have been transformed into a living spark plug, and she sped forward faster than she had before, closing the distance in a matter of seconds. She struck quickly as Yoro attempted to dodge but was just a little too slow, and her blow cut her opponent, leaving a nice gash along his shoulder blade. Managing to make some space, Yoro sped through a set of hand signs before opening his mouth, water style, severing wave. At this, Yakumo dodged the blast stream of water as she weaved around it, to come within striking distance as she struck and hit Yoro in the chest. Even though it was a glancing blow, the electricity sparking along her body managed to cut a shallow line on his chest. Flashing through another set of hand signs, Yakumo jumped back and drew her tanto from its sheath as the electricity faded and she began to wave her blade back and forth. Yoro was about to laugh only to stop as words seemed to echo through his mind. "Leaf ninja art. Yanagi." As the waving blades seemed to multiply with this, they resembled a willow branch swaying in the breeze. The leaves on the branch blew off and came at him as they passed. He felt himself be sliced by each leaf as it touched his skin. As this happened, he made to dispel the genjutsu only to find that Yakumo now stood with her blade poised to take his eye. Not only that, but he was somehow covered in cuts and gashes, even though Yakumo was seen by those in the balcony to have not laid a finger on him. At this, Yoro questioned, "How?" prior to being compelled to give up. Winner Yakumo Kurama. At this point, the medics arrived and helped Yoro off the arena floor, and Yakumo made her way back to the balconies, where she was greeted with smiles and a number of excellent performances. Yugo then stepped up and congratulated her student, saying, "See, told you, you could do it." She then winked at Yakumo as if they were exchanging inside jokes, and the screen once again selected the next group of opponents, Gaara vs. Rock Lee. At this point, Lee went into one of his tirades about how his alleged plan worked, and he and Guy shared a moment that made most of the room think they were going to lose their minds or go blind. The kanji for youth appeared in bold above the two of them as they looked out from the top of a cliff overlooking the ocean, with a sunrise taking place behind them. While Yakumo was continuously attempting to use her skills to dispel the nightmare. Like Genjutsu, Haku was doubting reality. Out of curiosity, Naruto, however, picked up one of the rocks from the cliffside and threw it over the edge, causing it to fall into the water below. Naruto thought, "What kind of sick genjutsu is this? They never did this when I was part of one of their training sessions." Ko yelled, "Turn it off, at this point. This is not something I want ingrained in my memory." Naruto turned to face his brother, who appeared to be motionless at first glance. "Hey, are you alright, bro?" Koga responded, "I think I'm blind," after he waved a hand in front of him. But Minato shook his head and shrugged, having seen the display between Might Guy and Guy's father enough times to realize that it was too late. Sakura, in the meantime, approached them from her position and decked them both while shouting, "Can you not mentally scar us with that, dammit?" Lee jumped the railing and landed to confront his opponent, who had been standing motionless waiting for him, after Sakura had finished reprimanding the two of them. The gourd's cork shot out at Lee before Hayate could even start the match, but it was caught in his hand in a blur before it could hit him. "Why are you so keen to get started before the game has even started? Dropping the cork?" Lee asked. When Hayate finally signaled the start of the fight, Lee charged at his opponent, but at first he was unable to hit Gaara cleanly because his sand was shielding him from all of Lee's blows, regardless of how quickly or from what angle. Lee wasn't sure he would even be able to hit Gaara after his usual attacks failed to get past his defenses, but Guy yelled from the stands, "Lee, now is the time for you to do it." "But Guy-sensei, you said it was only to be used when lives were on the line." With his signature smile that could blind an unwary person from more than 20 feet away, Guy said, "That I did, but this is an exception." Lee grinned and took off the leg weights he had been wearing. The majority of the audience laughed at this useless gesture, but their mouths dropped when the weights hit the ground and created two craters. The amount of dust that was kicked up gave the impression that a batch of explosive tags had gone off. His speed increased so much that he was able to hit Gaara, completing his strikes with the lotus technique. Hayate came to check on Gaara, who was now lying in his own crater, but Gaara appeared to be disintegrating as his entire body turned to sand as the real Gaara approached Lee from behind and started repeatedly striking with blasts of high-speed sand. "Lee, you must leave that place," Sakura shouted from the balcony, but Richi moved to stand beside her. Sakura turned to face him as he said, "That won't work." "Why is that, huh?" Sakura merely requested that Kakashi take over from the opposite side and continue where her sensei had left off. "It's due to the fact that the lotus is what you might call a double-edged sword." "What does that signify?" she inquired once more, demonstrating her ignorance of the situation. "You are aware that this technique is prohibited. What do you think the reason is?" Using this opportunity to show his pupil how far behind she was, Richi inquired. She said, "Well," but trailed off because she didn't have a good response. "The reason for this is that taijutsu, not ninjutsu or genjutsu, puts a great deal of physical strain on its practitioners. In fact, the strain is nearly unthinkable. Lee can hardly move at all right now," he concluded. "He is currently a sitting duck if that is accurate. Correct, sensei?" Mito asked, indicating that she had been paying attention to their conversation. "All right. Anyone can wonder how he's still standing, let alone moving, given how much physical pain he's in right now," Kakashi said. Many spectators were stunned as Lee took a ready stance, smiled, and ducked attacks as the match progressed, deciding it was time to use his ace in the hole. As Sakura watched it happen, she was incredulous. "He's smiling? He's grinning while he's running for his life?" "Yes, but now it's Gaara's turn to run as the Leaf Village lotus blooms twice," Guy replied quietly. "What does it mean that Lee told me that earlier?" she asked, causing Richi and Kakashi to pause before Kakashi spoke up in shock at what Guy had just acknowledged. "You didn't, Guy?" Guy retorted, "Yes, I did, and I don't know the consequence of what could happen. So that boy can use the hidden lotus and open the 8 inner gates. If that isn't, He paused to gather himself before posing the query, "All right, so how many gates can he open at this time?" Guy said, 5. "Wait a minute, what would happen if a primary lotus exerted that much physical strain?" Mito asked. In response to his surrogate younger sister, Kakashi said, "Exactly. There are 8 gates, which you can think of as chakra limiters. By opening them, you can go beyond the body's natural boundaries and protections. Only the first of these gates is opened by the primary lotus. The hidden lotus is revealed when the third gate is opened." Both girls gasped at what they had just learned. When all 8 gates are open, you could gain power to rival even that of the Hokage, but the catch is that in the end, you die. By using this technique, Lee was able to open up to the 6th gate and stage a comeback against Gaara, who was unable to keep up with Lee's insane speed. In fact, the sand that had been protecting him was able to inflict damage on Gaara, who was barely able to keep up. Gaara was sent flying into the ground with the final blow of his hidden lotus, but he survived the impact by turning his gourd into sand to cushion his impact. The problem for Lee was that the technique took a toll on his body to the point where he was barely able to crawl away. Before things could get any worse, Guy stepped in and prevented Gaara from killing him. This made Gaara stop, bringing his thoughts to a halt, and he then asked, "But why? Why save him when he failed?" "Because he's my student." At this point, Gaara stood up again, albeit more slowly than he would have liked, and he walked off the arena floor, saying, "I quit." He didn't do anything to help to acknowledge my existence. The rest of the room was taken aback, but it was too late. The match had already been decided when Guy had intervened to save Lee. As he left the arena, he glanced up at Naruto, and his eyes narrowed before widening in a sinister delight. After the two had left the arena floor, Minato signaled for some of the Jonin to repair the damaged arena once more. They used a joint earth-style jutsu to repair the floor damage, and once they were done, the screen rotated again to choose the next 2 names to battle: Menma Uzumaki, Namikaze vs Todasu. Menma bragged about how he was going to mop the floor with his opponent during this pairing, but Mito struck him in the head instead. Menma apologized before he entered the ring after she yelled at him, "Don't you dare go and claim this is going to be easy, this is the Chunin for a reason." His opponent descended without much drama, and the two assessed each other as they faced each other. Todasu was taller, with brown hair and brown eyes, and he wore a black bandana. Style Hite.8 in a gray vest with a black shirt underneath and tan shinobi pants. At this point, Hayate said, "Begin." Then, as if staring at a mirror, both fighters launched themselves into action, hoping to land the first blow as they both flashed through a series of hand signals. They both finished simultaneously, shouting, "Fire style! Fireball jutsu! Is he copying me?" Menma asked himself in his head as twin bursts of flame collided, and both of them had a stunned, bewildered expression on their faces when the flames subsided. However, before this thought could gain any momentum, his opponent made his next move. Using yet another series of hand signals, Todasu said, "Fire style! Phoenix flower jutsu!" At this he fired off several smaller but no less dangerous flaming spheres. Grinning Menma wove and dodged through the fireballs as he went through a set of hand signs himself, "Fire style bullet! Homura!" and raised his hand, shooting a respectable sized column of flame at his adversary. Menma smirked as he moved to carry out his plan as he and his clones went through a well-known set of hand signals, "Fire style! Fireball jutsu!" Todasu was able to have a clone take the hit. Menma decided 2 could play that game and called forth 3 of his own clones who moved to surround his opponent. As he performed a new set of hand signals, Todasu backflipped to avoid being hit, but he was still burned in multiple spots. And with that, 3 simultaneous blasts of fire now converged on their target. Fire style! Flaming meteors! At this point, Todasu created a plethora of tiny fireballs that streaked in the direction of Menma and his clones, eliminating the 2 of them while Menma dodged and twisted through the fireballs to get closer, but not before getting burned in multiple places. Once he was within range, Menma summoned 7 shadow clones and charged at full speed, slashing him with numbers and Uzumaki style taijutsu. Winner Menma Uzumaki. Namikaze. The screen went through the process of choosing names again, but with only 4 people remaining who had not fought, it was difficult to guess the pairings because there were only 2 possible outcomes. When the screen finally settled on one outcome, it was Haku Momochi versus Hineko Izuka. Menma pumped his fist in the air as he made his way back to the balcony, declaring that he was the man, only for Kakashi to roll his eye at this statement. When both opponents were on the floor, Hayate signaled for the fight to start. However, it didn't last long because Haku used her hidden mist jutsu to lessen her opponent's visibility and make it more difficult for him to retaliate. When the mist cleared, Her opponent was covered in senbon and on one knee. Hayate called it at this point because it would be obvious that Haku had won the fight. Menma could be heard complaining that they hadn't even witnessed any action at this point, while Naruto simply sighed at his brother's outburst and Mito grimaced. The final match was Choji versus Dosu. Naruto heard Choji say that he was completely out of his league, but Asuma assured him that if he won, he would take him out for an all-you-can-eat barbecue. Choji then shouted that he would win and that he would be feasting when it was all over as he entered the ring. Naruto waited until Choji was out of range before he said, "Don't you think that was a bit of a cheap shot?" Naruto posed an accusing question. At this point, the Jonin simply scratched the back of his head and laughed softly, saying, "Well, I didn't really force him to do anything, he made his own choice after all." Asuma turned to face the vault when Shikamaru said, "Some choice since you knew Choji would never turn down free all-you-can-eat barbecue." Despite the fact that Choji's opponent was able to use sound to strike even if his opponent's ears were covered like one giant ear, the match ended sooner than any of the others because it was a bad matchup in the first place. As the sound ninja returned to the balcony, Hayate declared, "Winner Dosu." After making this announcement, Minato took the stage to speak to the people who had advanced to the exam's final round, saying, "You have all shown excellent talent here today and have advanced to the third round of the exam. In a month, the third round will take place." Many of the participants were perplexed at this point, but before any questions could be raised, Minato said, "This may seem strange, but it is to allow for those who have shown their full skill set to improve and acquire new jutsu. We will be drawing for who you will be battling in the finals now. Additionally, this ensures that no one can exploit any knowledge acquired here today." Minato said, "Please come forward and draw." He pointed to a box that had the names of everyone inside inscribed on it. One by one, they went to the box and drew, and at last, the pairings were finished. They were as follows: Narumi versus Neji, Temari versus Shikamaru, Shino versus Kankuro, Mito versus Yakumo, Sasuke versus Menma, Ino versus Haku, Setsuna versus Dosu, Mito versus Yakumo, Fu versus Koga, and Naruto versus Gaara. Hayate concluded by speaking to everyone in attendance one final time. Use this time well to prepare both mentally and physically dismissed.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.